we're starting off with the mocktail because on this 365 sober-ish journey um is where is everywhere. And when I look and I see wellness and beauty aesthetics, to be honest, I love the fact that my folks tell me as a millennial that I don't look my age. And I think that's a millennial thing, right? Like we don't want to, we don't think we do anyway. Um, but part of that driving that culture is space. I see sleepy cocktails, like what supplements to take, um, eliminating alcohol for some folks or decreasing it. Danielle, you spent over 2 decades representing world class champagnes and wines in your Insider's Guide to Partying. That is you, right?
Yeah, there's me. I still work in the industry, and it's a wonderful industry to work in.
Yeah, I bet. Lots of fun, right? You talk deeply about the core atmosphere and styling. Three things that I love in correlation with food and meal service. Because, like I shared with you prior, I've been in food and hospitality for 20 years. Let me bask in any great tablescape. And we're gonna do the tasting right now, and it's gonna be something a little different than along those lines because we're gonna be starting with the mocktail. So our mocktail is just a rocks glass or any type of glass. On the inside is rubbed with, in this occasion, dried thyme, and then it's filled with ice, or a ice vehicle because I have big ice cubes in mine, and then a dried um, orange on top. And there is a sparkling mandarin orange water inside. So, virtually cheers. I love sparkling water.
It's very refreshing, obviously flavored, delicious. Yeah.
I don't know if you got any of that thyme in there. I did get a little bit of it. I decided to put the thyme in there because I have a produce stand that is literally a traffic light away from me. I'm on the East Coast. And you get like a whole bunch of thyme for like $2. That's all I want to do all this time. Um, it's, but I love thyme. I love to cook with it, and that was just really nice. Like I feel like what's what's great about mocktails, and if you're on that 365 soberish journey, now almost every restaurant I go in, I see them on the menu. So if you're somebody who's like, hey, like I'm taking a break or I'm moving away from it for health or wellness reasons, you now can find something that's, want to be able to correlate with your lifestyle instead of saying, oh, I'll just get a Diet Coke or oh, I'll just get a water or like a club soda, which I think is great. But what I don't think is great is if they're not done right. So the whole point of pairing some type of beverage with your food is to elevate your food experience. And to get something is like, oh, just like a high C or oh, this is like that. You to still be able to get that complexity and flavors with your food is what I think is a little bit of a caveat or gap in that culture.
Absolutely. A lot of great bartenders now are doing some great stuff with mixology with non-alc cocktails, which is amazing to see.
Yeah. Do you think um do you think the beverage industry is changing or that they're adapting to the shift in the 365 sobers culture?
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who works in the wine and spirits industry, for over 22 years, so spoiler alert, I'm over 21. Um, and obviously I still work in the industry and I work in the alcohol space. So, obviously it's certainly not I want to say concern, obviously we see people drinking less, but I see it as an evolution rather than a crisis. Every generation develops its own relationship with food, beverage, wellness, socializing. So it's our responsibility in the industry to adapt to those changing preferences, and I do see, like I said, a lot of great restaurants that have mixologists working on great creative cocktails are doing creative non-alc cocktails as well. And, that include premium products, lower alcohol offerings or alcohol-free alternatives, because people can have their choice. Do they want to go alcohol free? Do they want to just or have lower alc, in the cocktails. And it's all about creating that experience that resonates with the consumer for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I liked it. Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it too. And to your point about, adding time, things like this, cocktails, it's fun to play with the herbs too, right? Like rosemary would be lovely in that, or you can play around with the different herb notes, and it changes up the cocktail. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. The only other thing I've done at home is like muddle some berries together. That's always fun. I just had a birthday in May, and I did mocktails at home with sushi, and I ended up like one of the local supermarkets had like a circular, and they had something. I was like, "Oh, I'll try that." So yeah, I mean, like you said, I really liked how you tapped into like it means something different through every generation. And, honestly, I don't think it's going anywhere because, like I said, sober-ish. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you're out and you want that, that really nice glass of red wine and that, magnificent glass, right? To be able to have be part of that experience. So that's great.
It's okay, right? It's okay. It doesn't need to be taboo. It isn't taboo. That people might be drinking less. But what I also find interesting and what we see, in the industry is it's just they're drinking differently, right? Consumers are incredibly informed. They're deliberate, so they're prioritizing also quality over quantity. And like we always, for as long as I can remember, for as long as I've been in this industry, we're always encouraging um, you know, careful consumption, right? Nobody should be over drinking anyway, but they're being thoughtful. They're prioritizing quality over quantity, enjoying premium products. So again, just being mindful and like if you decide you're going to have that one glass, then make it something that you really want to savor and enjoy. And that's it's going to enhance the moment for you.
Great. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit. We're actually gonna get to a real cocktail. So we have some white wine here. It's the varietal is Chardonnay. So I mean, we can smell the bouquet and do all that stuff too. I took a wine appreciation class in college, and we went through all the steps, like the viscosity and throwing the glass and all that good stuff. But um, cheers, virtually.
Cheers.
Chardonnay is my favorite varietal. My favorite wine that I buy to drink, is most recently is, Bonanza is made by Cayman's, and it's sold at, like, the local Wegmans that I have here near me, and that's just, like, my favorite wine. Um, I bought, like, the Cayman's like, I'll buy 'em, like, a bottle, like, on, like, a special occasion, because they're pricey, but the Bonanza is, like, very much reasonable. I think right now it's, like, 19.99. But if I'm not doing that, like Chardonnay, and most Chardonnay, the older I get, I'm okay with the oaky Chardonnay. This brand that we're not gonna say what we're drinking is usually the one that I drank and I buy. But what is special about this is that it is in a I don't even know how to explain it. So without doing the label, it's like a pop top lid container, almost like an aluminum can, but it's plastic. It's not aluminum. And my main question about this is because I drink this brand. And then when I thought about, hey, like I'm packaging the on wine play, how am I going to send this to Danielle? And I said, oh, look at this. And this is something that I drink and that I like, and I could talk about it. And I drank one prior to, and I said, wait a minute, this is not the same wine that I normally drink. I feel like the flavors are different in this packaging than it is just in the bottle. Is that a real thing or if I'm just making it up in my head?
I mean, it is fun to see how packaging really. I'm looking at the bottle. wine packaging has evolved the same way consumer lifestyles have evolved, right? Bottles remain the iconic format and deeply connected to ritual, to storytelling, to premiumization. But at the same time, as we see cans like this first of all made it way more accessible for occasions where a bottle may not be practical, right? Poolside, nobody wants bottles. Traveling to, going on a picnic or something. So the beauty of it is brands like this one that we're drinking, they come in bottle. They're choosing the versatility about which packaging serves the consumer and their occasion at the time. So it makes it more widely versed. I don't know. I guess this is the same as what's bottled. Um, it shouldn't change the taste too much, because once it's packaged, it's at its peak. But sometimes, when things are resting in a bottle longer, I mean, some wines age in a bottle, right? So it can take on a little bit of a different taste. So it could have a slightly different taste.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm going way off cue here, but remember when kinda, like, people talked about boxed wine being tacky, and now it's just everything is like you see boxes, you see the small boxes, it's like 3 glasses and, these things, the pop top, and, of course, like, the versatility is there, but it's so interesting to me how that dynamic just shifts and changes.
Absolutely. Like I said, brands are getting savvier with meeting the consumer where they are and the occasions that they're at. So, as we see, there's a lot of enjoyment of, picnics and things like that. And it's certainly, it's not so taboo now to have wine in a box.
Yeah. Actually, is like you said, like, depending on your lifestyle, more versatile, especially when you got kiddos running around and the amount of glasses that my son breaks, or I break because like, I hear something, I'm washing dishes, and then it breaks. So, yeah, even, getting melamine glasses, melamine plates I have, just, it everything shifts with who you are. Um, so we're gonna take a little bit of a shift now, and we're constantly bombarded with quick fixes, whether it's the latest wellness trend, a luxury splurging habit, or even diving into 30 years of deep therapy. We are always looking for a formula. When you are operating on zero sleep, how do you practically protect your peace or your time on a daily basis? How do you divide your energy so that you don't completely lose intimacy, your friendships, or distance yourself from core relationships? I think this question is transitioning into the mommy culture, like, away from the beverage. For me, specifically, it looks like you gave a let it breathe metaphor in your book, um, about wine needing time to breathe and how a child needs to the same space to develop true independence. But what happens when we turn that lens inward? How does a mom or a parent allow themselves their own soul room to settle when they're trapped in the middle of things that are high stake or high pressure seasons of life? Because as we know, they come through like roller coasters and waves.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you hit the nail on the head. Like sometimes it's not just about letting the kids breathe to help them develop who they are. We all need a moment to breathe, whether you're a mom or not a mom or whatever it is in life. Sometimes when we're moving at the speed of light, right? That's when you tend to make the most errors. Like when you just take a breath for yourself and regroup, sometimes that's all it is just taking that moment for yourself, letting yourself breathe and reevaluate, the next step so you're not like rushing. I mean, how many times, just even at work, like, you fire off an email response and it's like, it's not that productive, right? When you're just rushed and you're just not taking that time to just reflect inward and take a moment for yourself. And then when you can put some thought into it, it makes you better. It makes me better at my email response. It makes you a better parent when you just take that moment to reflect inward and think about it. So yeah, it's not just about letting your kids breathe too. have the space to develop who they are. We all need to let ourselves breathe, to just have a moment to regroup and to come back together to who we are as well.
That's amazing. So I personally experienced a reduction in force in March. I'm currently employed now, thank the heavens. Even though it's so hard, I was there for almost 9 years, and to be able to transition into a new company, a new culture, and then I don't think that I blatantly said this on any of my stories, but my son has a official diagnosis of autism, and he's finally going into kindergarten this year. And it's not like, oh, I'm the queen of all the persons that have all the problems, because people have problems. But just to be able to identify and resonate with folks that are also going through similar things. And I remember in my riff, I'll call it, um, during that in-person meeting and conversation, it was very cordial. Um, and I don't know what personality that I've given off, like, for her 9 years, but it I one of the things that they said was like, "You're taking this really well." And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, "Well, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to, like, start flipping the table and, like, punching this guy on my left?" You know? It's a part of life, and I didn't know what it meant for me. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what was next. I knew that this is always like something like this has always been a passion project for me, so I would have time to do things. Um, Possibly, who knows? I guess that's like the awkwardness in me. Um, but I welcomed it. So when you talk about, I definitely resonate when you talk about the time, giving your own self time to breathe and giving your own self grace and mercy. Not just your kids. Um, because you're both going through it together. I believe that you had a pivot in your career, did you not? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think, you hit the nail on the head. For me, and that's why I love doing all these podcasts too, is because I really love shining a light on life transits, embracing life pivots. Because it's really and how empowering it can be. I have had a life of many life pivots. I was living from New York, living in New York, working at Miramax Films in the entertainment film industry, and having a time in my life. But then, I wanted to move to LA, so I decided to pick up and move to LA. There were no studio jobs, so I joined a personal PR firm, which I just quickly realized that avenue wasn't for me. And so here I am living in LA and left that job without having another job, which is very unlike me because I'm very type A. And so I fell into the wine and spirits industry where I have been working for the last 22 years. In that time, I also broke off an engagement when I, realized the life that I thought was going to happen for me, marriage, kids. He has kids from a first marriage and he didn't want more kids. And that became obvious to me once we were engaged. And so, here I am in my late 30s, all of a sudden realizing, as I said, this life that I thought I was going to have was going to be different. And that's why I love talking openly today because, you know, embracing those life pivots has led me to a fulfilling past. You just, the important thing is learning how to get over the bridge and get through the in between. You think you're losing a vision of you know, a version of yourself. You thought, a version of who you thought you were walking towards, and that space in between can be terrifying, right? It's scary, but you don't stay on that bridge forever. You cross it intentionally. And what I learned that is the in between isn't a void. It's the construction site. It's the lessons. It's all the things that are giving you, arming you, to build up your confidence to know that you can move forward across that bridge. And so, for anybody, even a mother who feels like the pre-baby version of herself doesn't fit anymore, But the fully formed mom version hasn't arrived yet. It's not for failure. It's formation. Everything is giving you lessons. And one of the biggest lessons I learned is, don't rush to define yourself just to feel safe. Let yourself be unfinished for a minute. Identity isn't something you snap back into. It evolves. It ferments like the wine process. It ferments. It deepens under pressure. And the most important thing to understand is that, the woman you were before isn't gone. She's still in there, but you get to, deepen yourself and keep the ambition, keep the humor, and you're just expressing it in a different way now. And that in between, that in between bridge, that in between season is where you can decide what comes next in your next chapter.
Yeah. So you could speak to maybe some of the things that helped you through that transition. For me, it was going to the gym and just kind of going there and like talking to people and meeting people and yeah, like doing some workouts too. Mainly sitting in the sauna, letting it all sweat out. Um, Going to get massages. There's this day spa by me. Oh my God. They have these like beds. I talk about it and I think this is my episode 2. Um, they have this like bed and it's amazing. Of course, like all massage tables have like the cushion, but they have like this heated bed and like you just sink in it. And I literally fall asleep like 3 times. And I'm like, I can't fall asleep. Like I don't really know where I am, but this feels great. They have this amazing lounge. And kind of when I was going through my notes and I was talking about this, I was like, is it kind of borderline like weird or I don't want to say insane, but just not right or just not in line with the fact that like, hey, like I have to cope, I have to get through this, and this is one of how I'm choosing to do it. And I stopped myself and I said, no, I said, this is how I have to work through and transform, through this bridge, as you called it, life. And these are the things that are gonna make me feel good. These are the things that are gonna make me tap in and not forget myself. Um, what are some of the things if you wanna share, that helped you, like, through that transition and not forgetting yourself and giving yourself mercy again?
That's a great point. You have to find what it is that's going to give you some internal peace because, finding that internal peace is going to help you block out that noise. Sometimes if we're frozen, like I say, in the middle of that bridge, if you don't find something to help you get over that bridge, to help your mind, give you clarity, then you could just be stuck frozen on that bridge forever, right? So it is finding those things that give you some peace. For me, I mean, one of those things, is writing. So when I broke off my engagement and realized that the path of motherhood might not happen for me, there's a bunch of things. That's actually when I wrote this book. It was 14 years ago when I was realizing that the path to motherhood might not happen for me. I immerse myself. I'm very close with my niece and nephew, but I'm also Aunt Danielle to many of my friends' kids. So, having that, I have such a maternal instinct. So finding that through my network and my village, and for them, also as a mother, I know that I always hear like it's just as helpful to have their village of, quote unquote aunties in their lives too. To give a fresh perspective as well. Sometimes I always say like, I've heard parents trade war stories like battle hardened soldiers because sometimes when you're in the trenches, it's not so easy to see the things around you. And as somebody who cares about these kids, just as in a big way. So writing for me was therapeutic, and it's also I wrote this book, A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting, because it's a fun tongue in cheek book about equating how to raise your kids well to wine terminology, right? It's a fun humor book, but there are poignant lessons. Because one, I say you don't need to be a parent to know basic human decency, right? Teach your kids manners, teach your kids not to be bully. But this was also my therapy because, realizing that motherhood might not happen for me, I realized I still want a seat at the table to how kids are raised well. We see a lot of things where kids are not being raised, or a lot of kids are, um, you hear about the bullying and the mean things, and it's disheartening to hear. So, this for me was my seat at the table to trying to have an impact on having kids, be raised well and in a good way, and hopefully come out of it with good manners and so forth.
That's amazing. Do you want to take the time to read an excerpt of your book for me, please?
So this chapter that I like to read is called "You Don't Want Your Kids to Ferment." So the whole book, every time I use wine terminology, gives the definition. So if you want to learn a little bit about wine, and so in the winemaking process, fermentation is when you turn sugar into alcohol, right? We think of sugar as something sweet. Alcohol can be harsh, biting. So this is about you don't want your kids to become harsh or biting because they don't have manners. Manners, manners, manners are the key to it all. These lessons need to start even when they're small. Teach them this from day one before they start to crawl. You don't want your kid to be the sour grape in the bunch and turn into a spoiled brat that kids want to punch. When they start talking, make sure they know thank you and please, and to always say bless you when they hear someone sneeze. Please and thank you are an absolute must. Without that, your child's a total bust. There's nothing worse than a child who has behavior that is crude, because it'll continue as they're older and become someone who's rude. People don't take kindly to and aren't nice to those with attitude, because it's very off putting and puts others in a bad mood, oftentimes causing confrontation and leads to a nasty feud. Wanting to put a little bit of poison in your child's food. Is that really how you want your kids to be viewed? Wouldn't you prefer there's someone who's wooed? Without manners, they'll ferment and turn into someone harsh and biting. They may turn into a kid who's rude, obnoxious, and always fighting. So teach your kids some manners and to have some heart and soul. Without that, your kid may well turn into an a-hole.
That's amazing. I love the rhyming. I did read a little bit of the book, and I plan on reading the rest. I love the fact that you put the knowledge in there, around wine because it's great to know what you're drinking. And people who need or look for that learning experience with, all the new things that all the new things that they're trying or they're doing, they'll be able to find that in there in your book. Super easy to read. Really super easy to read. So, um,
It's meant to be just a fun tongue-in-cheek book, right? But as I said, there are poignant real lessons, and this is certainly a great baby shower gift. You pair it with a onesie, you're done. Or Mother's Day gift with mom's favorite bottle of wine. But yeah, it's meant to just um, parents to be have just a little light reflection on how, yeah, just gentle reminders of, there's a chapter in there about is your kid a mulled wine? Mulled wines are served heated, they're spiced, sometimes served in a punch bowl. So a lot of parents, so that's about like you don't want your kids to be heated, spiced, or turn into a bully. And a lot of moms have said to me, that resonated with them because, in the day to day, right? It gets hard, it's overwhelming. And, that chapter resonated with many the most because, one woman said that she did get feedback from school, like her son was making fun of kids. And, it's hard. You always want to imagine, not my kid. That's not my kid. But sometimes you need that little gentle reminder to be like, huh, maybe it is my kid. And if it is, I need to, nip this in the bud and just take care of it now. And that's what it's all about. I mean, no kid, is going to be perfect. We're not perfect human beings. So sometimes you just need that little fun, gentle reminder of, yeah, I do need to take a look and just make sure that I'm taking care of this bad behavior now.
yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I'll just add that I think that that's looking in the mirror. Um, so one of the jobs that I had, did a school food service. And sometimes you would have those kids come in and um they would like early in the morning, like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, they would just be in a bad mood. And of course, everything that reflects and changes our mood is based on our environment, right? So what happens? So I could have woke up, I could have had a great morning, then, took Adonis, that's my son. to drop off line and then came back and got cut off, and now I'm all out of whack to talk to Danielle today, right? And my advice always to, the folks that I work with was like, "Hey, don't take anything personal because you don't know what just happened this morning." But as a parent, like, looking within, and I have to check myself sometimes, even though he's only 5, and I have to say, "Wait a minute, that's not how I'm gonna respond to this." Because there has been mornings where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, the world is falling down." You know what I mean? And, now we're gonna be late because the milk spilled on the table. So, like, "Hey, you have to be careful, blah, blah, blah." And then like, later on that day or the next day, I'll get a call or email saying, like, "Hey, the Adonis have, like, a bad morning. Like, he wasn't himself this morning. I mean, he's better now." And I found that that is very similar to that mom you said, "Not my kid," like, bullying. No way, you never think it's gonna be your kid, but on I guess, the other side of that or one of the other notches to that is be conscious of, the conversations that you're having, not only around your kids, but with your children, or even when you're talking out loud, um, because it's affecting them too.
Yeah, absolutely. They're sponges. They'll absorb everything. But you make a great point too, is you think about like, the person that cuts you off in traffic or things like that. I'm always thinking about you never know what's going on in their day. Um, yeah, there's so many things, and I always try and be cognizant of that. Like, I just think kindness is always the route to take because you don't know what's going on in somebody else's life. And you know what? I just think also kindness, it makes me feel better about my day, rather than if somebody cut me off, rather than get all fired up and work up my blood pressure, you know, I'm just gonna let it slide because like I said, I don't know what's going on in their day, and why am I gonna now ruin my day by building up this anger and make my, blood temperature boil and all that when I can just let it go. Let it go.
Let it go. I believe in the book, you kinda make a little quip out of it and you say, "Que sera, sera." And Syrah is another varietal, a red varietal. And, yeah, and one of my references that, me personally that I do all along those lines is, like, shrugging, like, "It is what it is," you know? Let it be. And I think I looked a little bit into that let them theory that, folks are looking into and talking a lot about, let that. Let it be. It is what it is. You can only control what you can control.
Exactly, and that's what that chapter is about. Yeah, que sera, que sera. Sometimes, I mean, at first there's a tongue in cheek thing, like, que sera, what will be, will be. Sometimes you just get a bad grape in the bunch. I said, no, it's in all jest. It's just, yeah, sometimes you just have to let things be and let things, nurture, and you can control everything, and all you can do is what is in your control, and that's, like I said, same thing about what we just said about. Um, if somebody cut you off in traffic, all you can do is what's in your control. And what's in my control is not letting it get to me, not letting it, turn me angry and flip them off or, yell at them or anything. I can do what's in my control, and I'm just gonna let it go. Let it go because I'm not gonna let it ruin my day. And that's what you can do.
Absolutely. So we'll talk a little bit. You mentioned the village and being an auntie in different villages, if you will, with the different landscape of friends and family that you have. How do you work with being a supportive app and balancing that with all your other roles?
For me, it's, everything we do in life is balance, right? So, mothers are balancing, being moms and still maintaining friendships and many balancing work on top of that. So, same thing for me. It's balancing, as I said, just because I didn't become a mom, that doesn't mean the maternal instincts go away. So, it's involving myself with my friends' kids. I also mentor kids as well. And like I said, being a part of that village makes me feel verified and valued as the mother figure, as that auntie figure. Because a lot of my friends' parents, they, They love, they've all said, it does take a village, and they do love having that outside network of somebody who's invested in their kids and obviously has a lot of care, but also has a different perspective, right? Sometimes, like when you're in it and you're just laser focused on certain ways, sometimes it helps to have an outsider perspective of somebody who does care about your kids, just to be, another sounding board or advice, or, sometimes also, kids don't want to talk to their parents about certain things. So to have that outside network of people that they feel comfortable sharing certain things with, is really helpful to parents as well. And it's helpful to me to feel like I'm, you know, um, to having an impact on a kid's life as well.
That's amazing. Danielle, we talked about a lot today, and we're going to close out. I want you to fill in the blank for me. So, looking directly at that parent, that mom who's listening during her messy morning routine or commute, or even taking it a step further. Um, I transitioned from saying just moms to parents, and now I think that it's appropriate to add in the village, like you just brought out. So they're in their commute, they're sitting in their kitchen, they're trying to reclaim their financial, their physical, their personal spark. Finish this sentence. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and my power is.
Belief. My power is belief. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself that that is where you're supposed to be. Because if you don't believe in that, then how are you going to propel yourself forward, right? You have to believe in yourself. You are your number one champion. And what's always going to get you to the next step or to cross that bridge is believing that you can do it.
That's amazing. My power is love. Um, I think what brings me back and what gets me through a lot is just to remember that I'm not just doing it for me. I'm doing it for my son. I'm doing it for my family. And to shrink yourself, to lose yourself, you're hurting people. You know, you're hurting people who really care about you. And if you love yourself, you know, if you love them, you have to love yourself. So my superpower is love. Thank you. So Danielle, you are absolutely amazing. Thank you for bringing your truth today. Thank you for your style and your unmatched perspective. And I really appreciate the time that we spent together today. And I think that this message is going to find those folks that need to hear it. I think that they're going to be able to find your book and be able to um, incorporate a different level of positivity into their lives, because that's definitely all I felt when I was reading it. So, thank you. I really do appreciate your time today.
So much for having me on your great podcast and enjoying these mocktails and the wine. And you're equally as amazing for everything that you're doing, not only for you and your family, but bringing this content out there. I mean, as a podcast listener, that's what I love, the most is hearing these organic conversations between people, because that's what it's all about. We're all just regular human beings, and we all have different perspectives, and it's always nice to hear different perspectives and share it out with the world. So thanks for the great stuff that you're doing.
Thank you.